Hi everyone, Adrian from Audio Excellence Canada. Hope you're doing well. So we are going to raise money between now and the American Thanksgiving, which is November the 24th, for the Daily Bread Food Bank and the Salvation Army. So for the first time ever in our history, we actually have merch. All right, so we'll only have three t-shirt options, all black. All the money goes to the charities, all of it, and we match it. Buy a t-shirt, feed a family, and get an opportunity to win the new Magnepan LRS Plus. If you buy 3 t-shirts or more, you automatically get entered into the promotion.
It's for a great cause. Please donate and help.
Yes.
Bye.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Okay, let's move on to speakers. Okay, this might get controversial. Magico versus Wilson.
Never heard Magico. I can't compare. But Wilsons are fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
It's not even close. I can't listen to Magicals. You remember we had a pair. Michael brought it in.
Yes.
Our client Michael, and
I'm struggling to remember what that model is.
It was like it wasn't the rounded ones. It was more like a V.
It had a wood finish as well.
Yeah, it was a beautiful speaker.
Yeah.
And I remember I asked you, well, what does it sound like? And he says, well, like sit down, set it up, have a listen. After 5 minutes, my ears were bleeding. I said, well, I mean, in the first 4 minutes, it was super impressive because it was like everything was like right there. It images so well that you can't help but be impressed. But after about 5 minutes, then you realize that it doesn't sound like real music. It's like something else. It's like a facsimile. And I could hear the metallic ringing of the cabinet or whatever the resonances that it allows to come through, even though it's a very inert kind of box. But it just sounded metallic and really artificial to me. And I'm sure the new ones are better, but it's hard to escape what that cabinet does and the way they emphasize the forwardness of the, especially the mids and highs. To me, it just doesn't sound right. I just don't like it. And to me, it sounded a bit like what I used to dislike so much about Wilson until Wilson was changed. The way Wilson's work now is nothing like that. It's a much more inviting sound, and I don't find the Magicals to be that inviting.
I'm more circumspect in that I sometimes wonder if. So I remember the first time I heard the Magico was the small bookshelf, the first speaker that they produced for commercial purposes. I think it was called a Magico Mini. And at a show, it was startlingly impressive. It threw this ginormous soundstage. The speakers disappeared really well. They had speed, articulation, all those kinds of things. But I was only there in the room for about 10 minutes, and I had gone to enough shows and heard enough systems even by then to know that you would need to listen longer to have a better idea of whether or not this would be a keeper. Subsequent to that, I've been able to trade in and hear many other models as well. As Villa pointed out, they do some things remarkably well. They always throw a beautiful soundstage, very, very good imaging, fast transients. If you played superb recordings, they can stun you and shock you. But therein lies, for me, and again I underline the issue. I don't just play. In fact, I rarely play audiophile recordings. When I say audiophile recordings, I specifically mean recordings that are superbly well done, but maybe not necessarily of great musical quality. And so when I play regular music, quote unquote, I don't find myself enjoying the results. And again, this is not to pan Magico by any means. Lots of products are like that. I find that if you are in the camp where you are interested in this hobby as a hobby, you're looking to be dazzled and shock your friends when they come over. Way back in 30, 40 years ago, you would play records like Telarc's 1812 Overture. So your friends come over, that's what you would play. And then when they leave, you play something else. So if that's the intent, I think products like Magico do that almost better than anything else that might be out there.
It is really, really, really impressive.
Yeah. Then, however, if your intent is to play music that you like and care for and love, you have to perhaps dig deeper to see whether or not the speakers can do that for you. I know that with Wilson's, without very much work, we can get them to play most music really, really well. Whether we throw on a Hagel or a Macintosh, and it could be the entry-level Macintosh integrated amplifiers, and musically they'll sound great. And then when you throw on audiophile qualities, they sound fantastic as well. So for me, that is a great answer. That's a great result that I would love, and most of our clients do as well. I think with Magico, you'd have to really dig and compare and sort things out and do all kinds of things to get them to maybe to do the same thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, so that's an interesting observation there. I've had clients come in here and they own Magico and they really like them, but there's always a but. And then they're trying to find this kind of balance where they still retain most of the qualities, but they want something that is a little bit more listenable over a longer period. So, they tell me that their listening sessions usually end after an hour, and they have to kind of maybe, reset somehow. And so they're trying to find amplifier solutions that work with the speakers in such a way that you still hear a lot of what it does really well, but perhaps not so much of it in your face or whatever, however they're hearing it. That is a common comment.
So again, I want to underline, these are our impressions. Our feedback has nothing to do necessarily with your own feedback. If you disagree, by all means, I'd love to hear your comments. This is just what we think of. And by the way, just as a thought, if you can, and you are very interested in Magico, but you're not really sure, if there's a possibility for you to hear a pair of Acoras, do that. Because for me, the Acora sort of does what Magicos do, but somehow they have this life ability to play a much wider range of music and also allows for easier equipment matching. Val, the designer of the speakers, if you see him at the shows, definitely go into his room and then ask him to play something. You will, if you look at the records he brings, you'll be shocked because he'll bring all sorts of music, and it's very rarely, well, he certainly will bring some audiophile standards because a lot of people want to hear those, but he'll also bring weird stuff, regular stuff. He'll bring Rush, that's a band that I never liked, never loved, hated the recording.
I've never understood those recordings. I've never understood
But
them.
he'll play Rush and you'll be sitting there thinking, oh, this is not bad at all. And yet, up until he played Rush for me, I always thought, sucks. So it may be a really good alternative for those of you who are itching to get that magical capability, but may be concerned about listenability. That's, for me, the primary reason why I brought in the Acoras. Okay, next question. Philip keeps saying you need to spend 3 times as much on amps as the value of Magnepan speakers. This makes no sense. Why? All right, Philip, since this was addressed to you.
Well, what does make sense then? Based on our listening experience, the one thing I tell people who come here to buy Magnepan from us, and we will usually, I would say 99% of the time, demo it with essentially one of the lower price Hagel amps, which in our case now we've determined, for instance, the LRS matches much better with the 120 rather than the 95. We used to recommend the 90 and the 95, but as you know,
they run out of power.
They run out of power and they shut down. I mean, we're using it at about 60, 65. After about an hour, the unit heats up to a point where it just shuts down. Magnepans, especially now with the introduction of the LRS and the soon-to-be LRS Plus, is an extremely inefficient speaker and very demanding of the power amplifier. Now, if you can produce a power amplifier that is the same price, that can work as well as the things that we have found that do work well with it, great. Tell us what it is and we'll have a listen and we'll go from there. But based on our experience of having, we used to recommend Nate 5SI is basically 2.5-3 times the price of a pair of LRSs or in that then MMGs. It's not something that we're saying you have to, but it's not just the fact that it has to be high current, because there are high current designs in mid-fi that don't work well with the Maggies. In particular, we used to be a Cambridge dealer, so we had a CA80, and I guess the new version probably does not work any better either. And that's a high current design. The wattage specification is similar to what the name is. It's a little bit less expensive, but the name always worked a little bit better. And then when we used the H90, that worked better than the name, and it was a little bit less money. And then we found that, for instance, with the LRS, I tried it with the H95. It was okay, pretty good, usable. H120, definitely a lot better in terms of every parameter. And then you hook it up to the H190, which has a higher damping factor, and that's the key thing there. And again, it sounds way, way, way better. And it was amazing with the 390. So as you go up the scale, you have to actually listen to all these things and hear for yourself. Now, if you don't, that's fine. You can have something less on it. You just will never get the maximum out of that speaker. If you're not concerned about that, great. I just answered an email for someone who essentially bought a 1.7, which is not an expensive speaker, and he bought a pair of S300 PS Audio Stellar Class D amp, and which is less money than the 1.7s, and he just upgraded to M1200s, and he thinks it's great. So that's a fantastic thing. If you really like what you're hearing, and that's within your budget, and you don't want to spend more than that, that's what you're going to have. It's still really good. It's just that we know, based on what we've heard, any amplifier that has enough drive or enough damping will sound really good with those, make those speakers sound really, really good. And that speaker is so revealing that it will tell you everything that is going on. So there's no cheat with it. There's no, compromise that will gloss over the inadequacies of your setup, because it doesn't do that anymore. It reveals everything that's going on, and for a fraction of the price. So what I often tell clients and potential Magnepan owners is that you cannot view the speaker as being inexpensive, or in other words, it should be much more expensive. The LRS should be 3, 4, 5 times the price. That's the level of performance at the very least. And so you're getting a great bargain. What you save on the speaker, you spend on the amp.
Yeah.
And I found that to be true in every case. Does it have to be 3, 4 times the price? No. Maybe sometimes it's twice the price. Sometimes it's, if you buy like a 3.7 and you buy a $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 amplifier, like something like the Parasound JC5, that's a good match. It has enough of the things that you need to make it work properly. Now, could it be better? Yes. It just has no end to how much better it can be within the limitations of what that panel can do.
Louis, any thoughts?
All the Maggies I've connected to, one was the a name, and the rest of them are all the Hagel. And I still think the Hagel, whenever I'm demoing them, I put the 190 on. I don't use the 120. And I tell them exactly what you say and explain to them, and they are in agreement.
Do they hear it? They hear it, right?
Yeah. They're in agreement with the Hagel is in what we sell here is the best match for Maggies. And of course, you're looking at a $5,000 amplifier versus the LRS Plus will be $1,399 plus taxes. So you can see what your argument is correct. So what you spend here for the speaker, you will have to spend here on the amplifier. But there's an equalization when you add the both of them. That combination is fantastic.
Right. There's an overall budget.
Right.
Like maybe it's $10,000 and you spend 3 on a 1.7. You spend 7 on an amplifier. They'll drive it correctly.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the simple observation that I've come to for many years now, especially with Maggies in the lower price range, and in particular when they came out with the LRS, is that a lot of people are not aware, or at least it's not obvious. A normal speaker costs a certain amount of money because a large part of the money goes into the cabinet. So let's say a speaker costs $2,000, a traditional speaker. A good part of that money goes to the cabinets, and then the crossovers, and then the multiple drivers, and then the time to put it all together, and so on. And so that speaker is $2,000. A Magnepan basically is a sheet, magnets in the back. There's no cabinet, so a large part of the manufacturing cost goes away. But it doesn't mean that speaker, if it was of that quality, should not be compared to a speaker that might be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So if you were to spend $5,000 on a cone speaker, a dynamic speaker, you would typically expect to spend at least that much money on electronics to get the most out of it. But what's fascinating with Magnepans, even with the LRS, is a speaker that is about $1,000 Canadian, plus or minus. And you can spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 more. And each time you go, you spend more, you easily hear the dramatic improvements, if in fact there are dramatic improvements, through those speakers. Whereas with a normal $1,000 speaker, there's a certain point where you can keep putting in great electronics and you won't hear very much more, if any at all. There's a point where it's just wasting your time and money. So I think that's an easy way to answer or explain with Magnepan. Okay, next question. Why don't you review more affordable speakers like Wharfdale, KLH, etc.? How do they compare with the Sonus Faber Lumina and Sonata series that you sell? Polk has been getting a lot of great reviews on YouTube lately. Also, why no Canadian speakers like Totem? Louis.
Well, I'll address the first part first. Why don't we review more affordable speakers? Well, if we don't sell them, we shouldn't have to review them. Personally, if you want to send them in, you buy them and send them in. That's fine. We'll review them.
No, they'll hate us for it.
Or hate us for it. But that argument makes no sense. It makes no sense.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Why should we buy something which we don't sell? We're not a review channel, first of all. So we review what we sell. And that's the most important thing. You don't go to a GM store and see Ford in the showroom for sale. No, that makes no sense. They sell what the manufacturer gives them to sell. So if we're not a dealer in that product, why should we review something that we don't sell? I mean, it makes no sense.
A better way of looking at it, Louis, is this. We've already done the review. We've listened to product. Product gets brought in here, and we listen to it. And if there's stuff that we think is the right choice for our clientele, the people who like to visit the store, buy from us, that's something that we will carry. I mean, Adrian will make a determination if it has the right kind of value going forward. And once it's in the store, then, since we're already carrying it, that's available for us to actually have a more kind of, formalized review. And that's what this process is. So it's not, it's like who is a tail wagging the dog? No.
We're a store. We're not a review channel as such. So I'm sorry if.
Well, apparently, I'm not a reviewer at all, according to some people.
So for me, the simple answer is that when we first started this channel and started doing reviews, I made it a decision to only talk about products that we recommend and sell, so that this way we can legitimately say things, good and bad, about the products that we sell or that we own. And we don't care if the manufacturer likes it. We're just going to tell the truth as we see it. But if we don't carry it and we say bad things about it, it can certainly be turned around and say, well, you don't carry it, as was the
boot card.
A lot of the issues that we had with the boot card. So that was a decision I made as to why don't we have more ranges of affordable products. A part of it is that there's only so many products that we can offer. We don't have a very large customer base for affordable speakers, unfortunately, and this is a sad state in my opinion for me anyway. We don't get a lot of first-time buyers. Most of the clients that we see, by the time they hear about us or get to know us, they've already gone through that process of buying the first and second set of speakers, and now they're coming to buy better. So if we had 5, 6, 7 lines of speakers that cost $5,000 and below, we'd sell very few of them. We just don't sell them. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to carry them. However, as the guys will tell you, I'm always on the hunt for better. So if something does come up and I do like it very much, we'll consider it. So for example, we recently picked up Apertura Swing. Very, very good speakers, small bookshelf, great speakers. So that's something that we will continue to evaluate. As to why we don't carry Canadian speakers like Totem, stay tuned. We may, in fact, at some point do something. It's not for lack of interest. Sometimes it's just time. Sometimes it's just availability. If let's say there's an existing dealer in the area, then we won't carry that product. But certainly, as I've mentioned in past videos, I would love to represent more Canadian products.
And Totem is by no means more affordable than the brands that we're already representing.
Okay. Next question. Do people really buy the crazy priced speakers / electronics that you review / display?
I just sold a pair of Aidas, so yes. I've sold multiple pairs of
Sonus
Sasha
Faber Aidas,
BWs.
yes.
I sold a pair of used Maxes to a client, and he is over the moon with them, and he got such a great bargain, even though, it's the price of a good used car.
Yeah. So yes. Louis?
My answer to that is come into the store and see what we have, and the store wouldn't exist if we weren't selling the products what we sell. So, I
think I've sold more MC 901s than anybody in Canada for sure. That's a $50,000 amp, monoblocks.
Yeah.
Look at Philip, he's flexing.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay, next question. Why should I consider panel speakers like Magnepan or Martin Logan compared to dynamic speakers?
First of all, that would be your personal choice. I like both. So
have you owned them?
Pardon?
Have you owned them?
Not panel, no. But I don't see my wife accepting those in the house.
As
I
my
thought
good
you were
friend
being banished to the basement, so she wouldn't see you anyways.
My system is going to the basement. I've been banished to the basement. So
as my good friend and your once employer used to say, "What are you, man or mouse? Squeak up."
Squeak up. I never heard that one before. Yeah.
Philip?
Well, I've owned the gamut. The only thing I haven't owned is I've never owned anything with plasma tweeters. But recently I bought a pair of CLSs again because that's one of your favorite speakers. I got a pair for $800.
$800? Do they work?
Yeah, they work. They work fine. So
I'll give you $900.
You have a pair.
I don't care.
You have a pair, and they're the original ones. They're this model, like the first ones, right? Which is the best one in my opinion. But
Did you hook them up? Did you hook them up?
No, of course not. They're just sitting there right now. They look new.
So what's the answer? Why should you consider panel speakers like Martin Logan or Magnepan?
Because it's another choice, and you need to listen to the entire gamut of things as much as you can. So because it's part of your journey, and you might stop there. Lots of people, when they buy panels, they really like them, and they're fine with how they sound, and they're very happy with it. So For me, really, I've gone back to horns again, and I'm probably going to buy another pair of, Wilson speakers. But I'd like to have a bit of everything.
Good panel speakers will do things that the similar priced cone speakers can't do. Speed, articulation, clarity, detail. Because a panel speaker basically has no box. The moving mass is much lighter, so they can respond to the input very quickly. They can stop much faster. I just find every time, for example, so when Willem mentioned he bought a pair of CLSs, my eyes light up because, as he says, I have a pair, and I also have, I think, 3 or 4 pairs of the old quads and other ones. When you play certain kinds of music, they'll do something magical that a regular cone speaker, similar price, just can't do. And so for those areas of performance, they are as good as, or in some cases even better than, speakers that cost a ton of money. So you're getting great value for money that way. However, there are obviously trade-offs as well. Most panel speakers cannot play deep bass well. They cannot produce high levels of volume very well. They don't give you the sharp kind of imaging that maybe some of you will really, really like. So there are some trade-offs. But again, if you ever get a chance to hear a well set up pair of Maggies or Magnepan, Martin Logan CLSs, listen to it. Again, the key is well set up with proper electronics. It might really.
I mean, the thing about the CLS, and the reason I like it so much, and I had the hybrids too. So it's strictly speaking an electrostatic panel. There's no woofer, there's no other transducer to give you information below, usually 500 hertz down to maybe, some of them are, I think, crossed over at 125 because the panel will go that low. But usually the panel cannot really do stuff below 100 hertz. And I'm pretty sure the CLS really doesn't either, but there's some semblance of information there. So it's just enough, depending on how you have it set up in the room. And, they all have the same constriction in terms of placement. You can only place them in certain spots because it actually uses the entire room to create sound for you. It actually utilizes, the space that you have them in order to give you enough coming back at you to make it like a full range experience.
Okay, last section. General questions. Which other audio channels do you like?